Do you ever ask yourself how wealthy people get rich and stay rich? Most people assume that if you are wealthy, you can afford to buy everything you want regardless of how practical or necessary the purchase may be. However, this is not the case at all. The wealthy all have something in common, aside from the fact that they may have millions of dollars in the bank. Rich individuals don't waste their money on frivolous things. Instead, they prioritize getting the most out of their resources by simplifying their life, saving where they can and spending money on what they need, not what they want. They are careful with their money even though they have more than enough of it. This video will show you 6 expenses you should avoid if you want to live like the rich and sustain more of your wealth. And if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button below for more life-changing content. Expense number 1. Expensive formal education. Examining the lives of the wealthy, you'll find that schooling had a small role in most cases. As a matter of fact, roughly 1/3 of millionaires are college dropouts who had aspirations beyond acquiring a degree. Having said that, I do not want to dissuade anybody from seeking a worthwhile formal education. My intention is just to provide the awareness that formal education strives to confine our thoughts to a narrow framework. Our time in higher education prepares us for academic achievement, but oftentimes that achievement is rewarded with a life of drudgery behind the desk. As soon as you step foot in the real world, you'll be confronted with the sobering truth that the expensive piece of paper you just spent thousands of dollars on will never be your golden ticket to financial independence. Getting wealthy is not related to being able to remember course material and pass exams. Most wealthy individuals grow their wealth by mastering practical investing skills that are not taught in school. Therefore, whereas college grads often spend the first 2 decades of their careers paying off debt, the wealthy typically spend the first decade or so of their careers enjoying financial security. The wealthy don't bother with pricey in-home tutoring service even when it comes to their children's education either. Instead, they teach their kids about real-life skills such as how to deal with finances, possessing a growth mindset, and how to look for opportunities. They do this so they may avoid the weight of college debt and the average paying employment that university prepares us for. Expense number 2. Expensive debt repayments. The wealthy avoid debt service and any additional fees that arise from being indebted to other people. This is not to suggest that debt is your worst financial enemy. As a matter of fact, the affluent often use debt as a means to further increase their fortunes. However, although this might be the case, there is another reality to consider. Not all debt can be considered equal. There are high flyers in the world who can tolerate being burdened by millions of dollars in debt. But for every one of those, there are many more people struggling under student loans and costly home repayments. When investing other people's money, wealthy individuals know it's a game of risk that could take a turn for the worse. As a result, a lot of rich people would rather not take the chance at all. To that end, the ultra-wealthy seldom consider high-interest credit card debt, taking out of vehicle loans, or saving expensive debt servicing on houses. Instead, they want to invest in something that will provide them a better return than their current rate of interest. They realize that making debt payments is a huge expenditure that can ruin your financial situation and most definitely impede your progress toward economic independence. This is because getting into bad debt is simple, but getting out of it is difficult. Let's take a look at college debt specifically. The average student debt is around $30,000, and it is estimated that a typical college grad takes up to 21 years to pay off that $30,000. This is equivalent to spending as much as 5 times as much time in college as was previously required. At the end of this loan, the principal plus interest on this debt will likely be far more than the original loan amount. It is for this reason that the wealthy steer clear of these toxic loans. If they do decide to take on debt, they make sure they have a well thought out plan for paying it back. Expense number 3. Expensive real estate. It may come as a shock to you that having numerous lavish residences is another luxury that the wealthy tend to avoid. I'm aware that this statement goes against the trend of celebrities showing everyone their expensive mansions on social media. However, self-made billionaires tend to be very cautious when it comes to buying a house. You'll discover that despite the fact that they live in mansions, those homes weren't purchased at their current prices. And even if they were, the prices wouldn't come close to matching the person's wealth, because they know that purchasing a luxurious home in a prestigious area is a poor way to increase finances. In fact, there are 3 times as many multimillionaires living in homes for $400,000 or less as there are multimillionaires residing in homes worth $1 million or more. It's common sense that a $1,000,000 home or neighborhood can set the stage for a lavish way of life that can put a damper on your ability to save and build money. In order to make the best investment and be certain that their property will grow in value, wealthy people always look for the best deals when it comes to real estate. They will look for a great house in a desirable area so that they can ensure that the property will appreciate over time. A common mistake made by the middle class is to take out a sizable loan in order to afford a stylish home. The majority of affluent individuals would tell you that investing and taking on this type of debt to buy a home at an inflated price should be avoided at all costs. Number 4. Designer brands. The second kind of expenditure that the wealthy tend to avoid is buying expensive designer labels. One of these areas is clothing, and specifically the kind of clothing that will leave the average person drowning in debt. Of course, you need clothes and good quality ones at that. But does it justify spending a fortune on name brand clothing? Probably not. The thing is, wealthy people aren't always wearing the latest and greatest designer clothes, especially if they know those shoes will fall apart in a few months. An example of this is Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, who has a net worth of $48.6 billion. He is well known for avoiding expensive clothing brands and instead prefers his well-known uniform of a simple t-shirt, hoodie, and jeans. Steve Jobs too was famous for wearing the same basic black sweater, jeans, along with the same type of shoes, even though his company Apple was one of the most successful in history. The wealthy understand that value is more important than price alone, so it seems to stand to reason that they are all frugal in some way. This is why affluent people like Bill Gates wear inexpensive accessories like Casio watches and the same pair of loafers for years on end. The rich usually have just the barest necessities in their homes. The more money you have, the more you understand that it can buy you the kind of meaningful, life-altering experiences. That is what is important to rich people. These experiences are worth spending money on when you really think about it. In contrast, there's no good reason for you to keep throwing money away on overly expensive shoes or clothes every month. Besides, if you work so hard creating money, why put in additional effort merely attempting to show it? Well, we are now up to 4 expenses that the rich avoid so far. Let's continue with the next 2. And I've also got a bonus expense that the rich avoid that I want to tell you about coming up. Expense number 5. TV, entertainment, and video games. Experts claim that billionaires don't waste any more than 60 minutes per day in front of a television screen. In contrast, the average person who can spend between 5 and 7 hours per day doing the same thing. The majority of millionaires don't own massive television packages because they'd rather spend their time doing something more useful, like reading an educational book or working on their company. According to a number of studies, there is a substantial correlation between total family income and the rate of TV consumption. Households with a net worth of less than $30,000 report higher levels of TV time, whereas those with a net worth of more than $80,000 documented much lesser TV durations and, along with that, greater life satisfaction. Wasted time and effort, not to mention lost cash, are the only results of watching too much television or playing too many video games. The wealthy understand to prioritize education over entertainment. They want to spend their time learning and achieving more success for themselves and their families, rather sitting on the sofa watching other people succeed instead. Expense number 6. Expensive cars and flights. Perhaps until now, you've been presuming that the wealthy all own lavishly expensive cars and travel first class on airplanes everywhere. However, this is not always true. Although traveling first class is firmly within his grasp, Ingvar Kamprad, who was the founder of IKEA and was once the second richest person in Europe, with a net worth of $58.7 billion, always flew economy class on flights and often would ride the bus. It's true that luxurious automobiles are only owned by the wealthy, but a large majority of them don't. Sometimes, wealthy individuals are seen driving vehicles that you and I could easily afford. Jeff Bezos is famous for driving a 1990 Honda Accord. Mark Zuckerberg often drives an Acura TSX, saying it is safe and unpretentious. This makes sense because most people see the benefits of automobile ownership at face value and fail to consider the long-term costs. Most of us don't need the added worry and financial burden that comes with a luxury car ownership, especially the maintenance cost that goes along with it. To keep all this into context, remember that it is not a recipe for building wealth when spending more than 10% of your assets or income on a vehicle that will quickly lose value. Many millionaires do not bow to peer pressure and drive older cars, unlike the majority of who fall into the trap of trying to appear wealthy while they sink a large portion of their money into a depreciating liability. That's 6 expenses to avoid so far. Early on, I promised you a bonus category earlier, so here it is. Expense number 7, dining out. Rich individuals also tend to avoid the practice of dining out, especially at the high-priced restaurants. Where the average individual just cannot seem to resist the temptation to dine out virtually every night, you'll find that the wealthy do this more sparingly, and when they do so, they choose more affordable restaurants. Someone with millions of dollars could probably stroll into any restaurant and purchase lunch for the whole staff, or even hire the place out entirely. But what is more common is for wealthy people to be more prudent with their money and not to blow thousands of dollars on food at inflated prices. Rich people treat eating out on a nice restaurant a rare luxury, and generally prefer buying fresh foods in a supermarket so that they can enjoy healthy food at home. Some of this is because wealthy people tend to follow a healthier eating lifestyle than those with less money. With the 7 expenses that the rich avoid now listed, ask yourself how many of these expenses you are currently paying for. Remember, there is a big difference between being wealthy and appearing wealthy. Quite frequently, we can fall into the trap of incurring expenses that may make us look as if we are climbing the financial ladder, but the truth may be the complete opposite behind the scenes. What this video teaches us above all is that rich people understand the value of money. They have worked hard for it, so they look after it and protect it and don't spend it on extravagant things that they don't need to prove their success. Thanks for watching.